Okay, here we go. All right. So this would be lesson 6, um, God's multiplication table, or uh, what do we call this for short? Multiplication. I can't remember what we call this for short.
God's
Yeah,
multiplication
yeah.
table.
There's a name we call it. Anyway, um, so it just went out of my head. So this is lesson prep. Yeah, get comfortable, right? Um, this is intended to help prep you to go, and we're going to go through the lesson conversationally. This is a look behind the curtain, just to give you a deeper understanding of the lesson. And every lesson has a theme. So it's like we went through each theme so far. This one is the theme is, if I do this, this is the result. This is, if I make disciples, then this is, uh, what could, this is the this is where it's going. Boy, I can't. I'm really prepared today. Um, so, but again, I'm admonishing: don't change the lesson. That's a pitfall. Try not to improve it. That's not your job. If you're trying to do that, then you don't understand the experience of the author or his experience. Um, your lack of understanding doesn't mean you can change the lesson just because you don't understand why something's there, or if you don't understand a point, doesn't mean you can alter it because you don't get it. Use the illustrations as much as possible. Some don't translate, and that's understandable, but stick with the illustrations as much as you can. Until you can teach all 9 lessons and actively discipling people, then only then and only then can you start tweaking the lesson. And that's, again, it's not a hard, fast rule, it's just the way I do it. So, the lessons fit together. So if you don't present them correctly, you're going to could mess up the flow, give a misunderstanding of what this is about. If you like I said, if you change this, you're saying you know more than the author. So stick to the script. And these lessons, the way it's written, is intended for crowd communication. Um, what we're doing is more individual. So in crowd communication, you got to be careful because they don't ask questions normally, and they don't ask for clarity, and so you communicate something incorrectly, you won't know it. If you're across the table from somebody, it's easy to understand. Sometimes you can still do it, but it's easier to understand. So crowd communication, you have to be careful. Teach from a position of humility. Never say this is what's happening here because you don't live there, and you don't know the people they know. So always come from a position of, I don't know what happens here. I don't know what happens at your fellowship. I don't know what happens in your life. But let me tell you what happens in my life, my fellowship, my country. You can speak to that, but you can't speak to them. So, and usually they'll identify with what's going on because a lot of what happens in the the church, the body of Christ as a whole, is a flesh problem, not culture. So, teach from a position of humility because it is a privilege to be there. Um, make what you do repeatable. Technology is fine, but if you make it highly technical, PowerPoint, uh, projectors, that kind of thing, they will not feel like they can duplicate what you're doing. We're back to the stick in the dirt. Lowest form of technology. Keep it simple. Review all the lessons from before, and don't take out the book. Do not bring out the book because it weakens your presentation if you do that. Anything else?
I think you said this a couple sessions ago. If you want to make a photocopy of a part of the book, like a story, I think this is maybe where we got cut off.
Yeah.
at the end of 4, but that's not a bad idea. And
Yeah.
make a photocopy, or like if it's a, because he does use a ton of
Yeah.
illustrations. I can't remember all those
Yeah.
illustrations, and I'm not good with remembering that stuff. I can remember a lot of things. I can't.
Yeah.
Not good with illustrations and remembering them.
If it's hard for you to remember stories, that's fine. Uh, if you make a photocopy, I'd actually suggest you write it out.
Yeah.
Write it, and you're like, wow, that's a long illustration. I don't want to. Well, then don't write it. But I'm just a suggestion, not a mandate. Okay, so God's multiplication table. If I do this, this is what will happen. Is pretty much the theme of this, and um, this kind of bounces off of 2 Timothy 2:2, is the main text. It's a huge text, and it presents a principle that is repeated overtly and subtly throughout Scripture of the New Testament. A four-generational idea. But that's not your first point. The first point is the profile. Um, the profile is very important because if I produce a disciple, this is what they could look like. I think Jason was the first one I ever heard. Um, was it him or maybe he stole it from Herb? I don't know. But taking an orange and cutting it and showing the sections. Was that? Have you heard that before? It must be just Jason then. So you take an orange, you cut it in half, and you see the sections, and
Yeah.
each section is an orange, but it doesn't make an orange. But all of them together make the orange,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the profile. It's like sections. Each one is not, but all of them make up the one. So that makes sense.
So hold on, back up for a second, because you said, so you said point one is
The
the
profile.
profile of of a disciple maker,
Mm.
but what about all that before in the book of Acts as he walks through? That was presented this past Saturday, and it was about 30 minutes. It
Oh
was a
yeah.
long presentation of the book of Acts, of going from addition to multiplication. And he does that he does do that at the first of the book. um,
Okay.
so how would you suggest that? Like, that could take a long time, because that could be I mean, there's a lot of scripture that he uses in the book, and if you take a systematic approach to that, that could take a long time. So you just kind of skipped it. I mean, what's your thoughts about that? I'm just asking for
um,
reference purposes.
well, that kind of thing has already kind of been said. I mean, so you could reference it. I mean, I'm not against it. Um, Generally, when I teach this, all like I said, a lot of that's been said already. So
Okay.
I may reference it in my review. Um, so I would maybe treat it like that. That's a good question because everybody
Yeah, I
teaches a
mean, I
little bit
just
different.
yeah, because I have a very small, like, when I have taught this in the past, it's very brief. Highlight Second Tim 2:2,
Mm-hmm.
and then do a brief review of the way the Book of Acts is open.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, you can expound on it,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be labor. Some it can be it was long. It added to a longer teaching than
Mm-hmm.
what it should have been.
Right.
But I would say, like, what you're saying is, you can maybe hit it for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and or,
Yeah.
hit it however you feel led. But
Well, here's my here I guess here's my reasoning. And if you did it that way, I like I said, I'm telling you to stick to the book. So if
yeah,
if that's what the book does, then
it does.
by all means go for it. But the reason that I don't really hone in on that very much is because what I'm really trying to give you is a idea of how this works and how it eventuates, and that's great. It's not bad. It's just I guess I'd rather spend my time elsewhere.
Yeah, understand. Yeah.
So
And the
that's a good
profile of the
that's a
disciple
good question.
maker is a, but that profile of a disciple maker is not even really built off of that
Yeah,
first part of the lesson. You
yeah,
know, it's like it's not that they don't go, because I know there's a point and a purpose, but they don't. It doesn't flow like a lot of the other
mm-hmm.
lessons, and that's why I just, not saying kick it out, but it does seem redundant. It seems redundant if 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 you're trying to prove the point that they added and then they multiplied. You can just say they, maybe my opinion, you can just say we see the progression of addition and multiplication in the book of Acts all the way from chapter 2 to chapter the end of chapter 5. They're adding constantly, and then chapter 6 through chapter 9, there's different references of where it
Mm-hmm.
increased, it multiplied, and then move on,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, yeah, I struggled with that one a little bit
Yeah,
the other day.
yeah,
Um, but it brings up a good point. That's why I don't know.
yeah. That's
Maybe
good.
that was
No, it's great. I'm glad you brought it up because I I get pigeonholed in the way I do it. So I don't.
understand.
I mean, if somebody did something else, I'd be like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but you got to think about folk, which you bring a good point. It's where is it focusing? Where are you trying to focus? Are you trying to focus it on church history? I mean, or are you trying to focus it on what we're trying to do? Right? Where are we going? So this is what they did, and that's fine if you want to bring that up. Here's what they did. They added, and then it turned to multiplication. Fantastic. But that's not a half hour. I would admonish you not to make that a half hour. If you want to say it, that's fine. But say it and get it. You know,
yeah,
say it and get on with it.
yeah,
Because what you're really trying to show, if I do this, what's it going to look like? That's the thing. If I do
yeah,
this, what's it going to look like? And this is what it's going to look like. And that's what you're trying to present. Okay? Because if you don't present it, then then you know, you, just like any other lessons. I mean, it's not just this one, but any of the lessons, any point can become a life of its own, and you can really do a good job on that point and miss everything else.
yeah,
So so just keep that in mind, whenever you're preparing.
yeah. That's good.
And in this profile, we're not going to go through each one, but in this profile, again, down, slow down. Oh my gosh, I every time I think of this lesson, I have one picture in my mind, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I was just like, I was in the back of the room. I'm glad I was in the back of the room because I was about to lose my mind. I was like waving my arms. My hands were on my head. I was like, oh my, I was physically having a problem. You know,
Yeah,
I'm glad I was in the back of the room and the person wasn't even paid. They were teaching like this, and uh, and I was like nobody was watching me, nobody was seeing me, and it was so good that they didn't because I was about to lose my flipping mind because they went through this is how they did it. They said, so a profile disciple, what do they look like? Well, they look like a son. Then they look like a soldier. They look like an athlete. They also look like a farmer. And I was like, slow down. Where are you going in such a hurry? I mean that's the way they were teaching it. I was just like, I was about to lose my mind.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
anyway,
and the good thing about these profiles, um, the good thing about these profiles is they are in the scripture. That it's not, he's not making this up
right?
as something he sees. The good thing is it's in the text.
Yeah,
The challenge is there's only usually one verse for each one
yeah,
of these. So, and Herb doesn't do a ton of in depth with the each one of these profiles, but this is a great place to add personal experience
Mm-hmm.
if you are a soldier or know somebody that's a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
If I grew up on a farm, when we get to the farmer thing and I'm teaching this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm adding all kinds of, and when I'm saying I'm not adding my opinion.
Right.
I'm adding my
Yes.
experience
Yes.
because I know what a farmer has to do.
Well,
And like
yeah.
I have a note beside farmer and husband that I've never heard anybody say it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the idea of really going back to the book of Ecclesiastes with the seasons, the whole song that the birds turn to every thing there is a season,
Mm-hmm.
turn. And so a farmer has to discern the seasons and trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's a note of mine that is not in herbs.
Mm-hmm.
I have injected it.
Right.
That's my opinion. You can disagree with that, but I do feel like this is the only lesson that you can lean into and and add some of your personal
Right.
experience and flavor to. Don't take away,
Right.
but you can add a little bit of what your knowledge is, like you said about. We all know what a sun's like,
Yeah, but
or
these are
what a
concrete ideas. These aren't these
exactly.
and anything based in concrete like this, anything physical like that, then if you start relaying your experience, my you're going to deepen you're going to deepen the arrows you're pointing at yourself. How's that? I mean, it's
Yeah,
like it's like when you start really understand, just like a soldier, you know, you know, a soldier has to be identified. You start thinking about these things and you're like, oh, I mean, and then it starts hitting you with what a believer is. And you're like,
yeah,
wow. And then you start recognizing, you know what? Might not be as much of a believer as I thought I was.
exactly. Because that one of those points there about the soldier is
Mm-hmm.
they got to be focused on the task that
Mm-hmm.
they've been given. They're not focused on the task they've been given. They don't play like a because
Yeah.
the camaraderie of a soldier.
Yeah.
It's not. He's not a one on. It's there. You if you see a soldier by himself, he ain't gonna make it.
Yeah.
So there's that. Like I said, I struggled with this profile early
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a very much put myself into
Mm-hmm.
the lessons,
Yeah.
and I try not to add too much to it. I would say that these profiles, if you feel comfortable, stick to the script.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a certain illustration or upbringing that triggers your understanding of one of these, then especially those first few
Right.
with the farmer, the athlete, and the son and the soldier,
Mm-hmm.
those are the ones that can be elaborated on from personal experience.
Well, I mean, yeah, like if you're a military brat, uh, you know, you know the pick up and go.
That's right.
I'm under orders. You know,
That's right.
I mean,
Bingo.
I don't have that, but I can imagine. You can start really imagining all the little components of it, and that's great. But ex- and I guess I need to don't go quickly, but be careful not to get too in depth. So
Yeah.
find that good balance of, man, I can make some big points here, and really show what this is supposed to look like, and show the process. Um, but you don't want each point to become its own lesson.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I even with what I said, it's like, oh crap, I opened up a can. But
No,
then as you
not at
open
all.
up a can, you got to realize that this is one of, in my opinion, one of the lessons that opens a can.
Hmm.
But you got to be careful because you got to remember everything that you said at the beginning of each lesson.
Yeah.
And again, you have to do stuff in moderation when it comes to this part of the lesson. Don't, yeah, like you said, they're not built on individual. So you could do an individual message on every one of the profiles.
Absolutely, absolutely could.
That's not what Herb does. That's
No,
not the point of the
no.
study.
You're
Point of
trying.
the study
Yeah,
is enhance it a little bit.
yeah. You're
If you
trying.
want to enhance.
Yeah, you're just trying to give an idea of some of the qualities a person will have, and actually it comes out qualities I have to have, qualities I
True.
must have. These are qualities that I must emulate, so that somebody else can pick them up. So, like I said, the more you open this up, the more you're just, it's almost like punching yourself in the face. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Sometimes we need that, but
right. So take your time,
maybe not in front of people.
go through the profile, and this is where you can really play in the text. And there's some things in the text. I would suggest that you get a Discovery Bible by Gary Hill that that really shows a lot of information that you normally wouldn't see in a text. There's a lot in there, so use that resource. So, so once you do the profile, then you're going to move to the procedure for multiplying disciples. This is where you're going to go back to 2 Timothy 2:2 and really use this. And when you make this chart, understand you need to be able to work inside the chart. Just don't put it up there and move on to the next thing. The chart is important. The Paul, Timothy, faithful men, others also. Um, this is the four generational standard that I believe, you may disagree with it, but, some people can disagree with it if you want to. But it really is the standard for, am I doing this? Is this working? How do you know? It's when the fourth generation is born. The others also. Um, so I know what I want to say. Good. Anything you want to say about that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you hear my dog?
Uh-uh.
You can't hear him? Okay.
Uh-uh.
Yeah, my wife must have left. So my dog's barking at me. He wants to be where I am. So
He's ready to play. He's ready to
no,
pee,
no,
play,
no.
something.
He just wants to be where I am. Um, I'm gonna have to get him.
Get him, man.
Sorry.
You're good. We'll talk a little bit. So, and it's funny. Bill leaves, and I'll talk a little bit um, as he goes to get the dog. The illustration can be simple, but the Paul to Timothy, the faithful men to others also, you can actually write that out. I'm sitting here talking while
Okay.
you're, but I was just talking about the way I've seen the diagram done a couple different ways,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that I personally like the diagram the best is the funnel,
Mm-hmm.
is the funnel way. Now I actually have seen people do it in other ways where they've drawn it out um, to where it looks different, but the concept's the same.
Like a
But I
pyramid.
would like a pyramid,
Yeah.
correct? And then, but for me, I like the right the Paul to Timothy,
Yeah.
and it's two, right? Because
Yeah.
again, you're getting ready to give these illustrations about multiplication that you should be able to see the Paul to Timothy to faithful men to others also. You should see that diagram in your mind while the illustration of the penny, the um, uh,
Evangelist.
evangelist, and I like the idea of it going one, and then the faithful men's a
Yeah.
little bigger,
Yeah.
and the others also. That's just my opinion.
Right.
That's how I would do it,
Right. And you
but
can
it
do
can
it
be
the
done
pyramid.
different ways.
Yeah, you can do the
Yeah,
pyramid, but the bad thing about that is it looks like a hierarchy where you're on top.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And that's not what we're trying to project. We're trying to project an outward flow, right? I love I love this as far as that I can talk about. I can just look. Okay, what do we see in here? And I may have said this again. Got to go back and watch my own video, but um, I look at it and say, look, what do we see here? We see Paul and Timothy. We got and two unnamed groups. That means once you get past Timothy, Paul has no idea who he's talking to, and he may never know the others also. So it's not about whether or not you can put your hands on these people. You got to know that those other generations are coming, and you got to do
Yeah.
it in such a way that you look through Timothy to the next generations without intervention, without your intervention. Now
Yeah.
that's huge. I mean, how many people uh, will invest in somebody, but then they've got to be their catalyst. They got to be their prod to get them moving. Well,
Yeah.
if you got to be their prod to get them moving, guess what? You ain't got. You ain't got a disciple. Because if they're not
Yeah.
moving on their own, then you ain't got much.
Yeah.
So that's a really good chart to just meditate on, think about, and really point it out to people, because a lot of these pastors, again, you're going to be talking to a lot of pastors in third world because you've been given instant credibility and given access to them, um, and they're thinking in the traditional sense that they got to control everything, and to release control into the hands of somebody else is a huge no-no when it comes to modern uh,
You don't
theological.
trust anybody else to do it as good as you've done it.
Right. I'm trained. I'm paid to say it better.
Yeah.
No, no. You need to be. You're paid to help others say it better. That's a better way to say it, maybe. Um,
Yeah.
so so when you get through this procedure for multiplying disciples, this is the goal. Is that fourth generation? Like some people will say, "Hey, yeah, I'm making disciples," and you see that first generation, you're like, "Well, where's the second and third gen? Where's the other generations?" They're like, they're not being produced. Then you've missed it.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty harsh. Yeah, it sounds harsh. It is harsh, but that's the standard. Well, I don't want to shoot at a 10-foot goal. I want to shoot at an 8-foot goal. Well, you're pretty strict on these rules, ain't you? Yeah, well, that's the rules. 10 feet,
Yeah.
certain size court, certain size basketball. Sorry, you can't play the game. You can play it, but it ain't a real game.
Yeah.
Nobody takes it seriously. Oh, that's a. Whew. Does God take your game seriously?
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're not playing by the standards. His standards
Right.
are 4 generations. So.
And one other thing to add here, it kind of came up in conversation, and then it went a different way on Saturday.
Yeah.
But the like, how do you know you have a Timothy, right? And from there, this was not brought up, but this is something that I've wrestled with, something that I've learned the hard way. But sometimes you have to, especially if you know who that faithful person is that's in your lineage, that's in your process of the reproduction process. Like you've got a Timothy, and then the Timothy has done okay. He's gotten some people. He's a good connector of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
but then he's not a good reproducer. What happens a lot of times is you have to come in, just like many grandparents are raising kids today.
Mm-hmm.
It's a society thing that happens in our Western world here in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. Sometimes, th- and this would not be conversation to say you would. I don't think you wouldn't get into this conversation and teaching. You just ain't gonna happen.
Mm.
But for us, practically speaking, and practical purpose reasons, sometimes you have to um, come along beside of some of your grandkids
Mm-hmm.
or great grandkids if you do even know who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what's your thoughts about that? What? Because I know you've done it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times it's you're correcting a mistake. You miss something, so you have to come alongside to kind of complete that.
Yes.
Um,
Which is what a good grandparent
yeah.
does,
Yeah.
because a grandparent's already been a Timothy
And
before.
if I ever intervene, it's never by me. I don't intervene. Other
Yeah.
people have done something to make me intervene or engage me to intervene.
Yeah.
So I've, I'm only go where invited. I don't go where not invited. So I don't assess and go, ooh, you're doing it bad. Let me come in and correct it. It's the person's either come to me and said, hey, I'm not doing something right, or the person that is being influenced or being
Yeah.
discipled is not getting what they should be getting, and they recognize that, and then they come to you. And
Yes.
and it's not a I me not pursuing, it's their pursuing. So
And then when that happens, from my own personal experience, you not only realize that um, you've got a bigger responsibility than you thought, you're going to realize you probably didn't do a real good job of training your Timothy.
yeah, right.
So it always comes back to the Paul. It comes back to the weight is on the person that's taking the personal
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. It's going through the process of building a Theophilus, a Timothy.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I'd say it. This is a great place to make this statement. You've already said it. You said it in the last one. In the last one, this process will kick your butt.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need nobody else to do it.
Nope.
And this is one of the things. Once you start to see this chapter 6 come alive, this text come alive, you're gonna get your feelings hurt.
Mm.
And if you're not, then you're not engaged in the process yet.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you right now, to see your offspring and how they act and what they lack,
Yeah.
dude, that's responsibility that's sometimes has to come back
See,
to.
we do that physically. We do that physically. We
Yeah.
look at our kids, and you know, we go, wow, I raised a good one, or wow, I raised a real jerk. You know,
Oh no.
ooh, I raised a cruel one. You
Yeah,
know,
I won't speak to that, brother.
yeah,
But
I'll leave
yeah.
that one right there.
But
Um,
that's the point is this is messy.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
a messy process, and we have to understand. We have to be okay that we're gonna mess up. We're gonna have
yeah.
messy experiences, but
You're gonna suck at it when you first
yes,
start. You're gonna suck at it.
yeah,
You know, and you need to. You need that nose flattening a little bit. You know,
yep,
where nose meets pavement. You need that because if
yeah,
you don't, you get all arrogant and you get all cocky, and then you still got to go
right,
through it. God still got to take you down because you come from that position of humility, and nothing
yeah,
says humility like failure, and not just failure but public failure.
yeah.
So.
And this doesn't equate to, for any pastor listening, this ain't got nothing to do with what you do on Sunday morning.
And I don't care
It's
how
not even connected.
good of a shape you're in. Standing at the 50-yard line at the middle of the Super Bowl in your underwear ain't comfortable for nobody. You know what I mean? I don't care.
Oh,
I don't
I
care
know what
how good of a shape you're in.
you mean.
Yeah. So yeah, get you some. So so after the chart, you definitely want to hit the hearing because hearing is vital, necessary, and not automatic. And you need to let people know hearing is not something that you just, oh yeah, I can hear. Yeah, the person who thinks they hear every time
Oh Lord.
don't hear at all.
Yeah.
And the whole caught versus taught, it's so true. That's where the Second Timothy 3:10 and 11 comes in, um, because a lot of times people are not going to hear until they actually are going and doing, and the only way they're going to go and do is if they're with you. You're the
Yep.
catalyst. You're the one.
It's Mark 3:14.
Yeah, exactly. The with him principle. And then and I would definitely hit the commit or deposit. Um, Hit that one hard because we understand money, we understand investment. We Everybody around the world understands money. I don't know anybody that don't know money, unless you're just some butt naked pygmy on some island someplace.
Yeah.
And that's not a derogatory. That's just fact.
Yeah.
You know. Um, so anything else about point two?
Tally ho to point three.
All right. So the illustrations. So what's ever in the book, use whatever you like. Me personally, I use only two. Um, I use the evangelist and I use the doubling of the pennies. Um, the doubling of the pennies is good to show the power of compounding. That's the big thing there. But when you do the evangelist, that hits us where we live because most people will focus on evangelism, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with evangelism, but it ain't going to get it done, and we need to understand that. I think that's the biggest thing about that whole thing is the evangelist versus the disciple maker. Is evangelism's great, it's necessary, it's fine, but it's not going to get the job done, and we have to understand that. So once we understand that, then we can really focus on what is important, which is making disciples. You're encouraged, you're mandated to make disciples, not just spread the good news.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, I think evangelism. Well, you can think all you want, but the mandate's this. And you know what?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I understand the mandate or not. It doesn't matter if you understand the mandate or not. The mandate's been given, and you need to follow it. Period. And
Well, and I mean, you can even go back to the Great Commission with that. You know, I mean, because you go back and when I say go back to the Great Commission, go back to the strategy with that and read 28 in Matthew. You know, go back 16 through 20 and
yeah,
read those verses because that's specifically stated in chapter 2,
yeah,
lesson 2. But and thinking about early on for me, this is one of the illustrations as a pastor, people trying to label me early, 20 plus years ago, 20 couple years ago, label me as an evangelist
mm,
because of my just my personality. And I was like, hey, I don't that I don't like that.
mm-hmm,
I don't like the way that even that title comes across. So anyway, this one hit me hard because we had just had a evangelist show up to the church that I
mm,
was at and did absolutely destroyed the emotional side of probably hundreds of people. It was
mm,
a very large church in our county. And I can remember thinking, is if that's an evangelist, I don't. And
mm,
so thank God that dude showed up because who knows where I would have been. And then
yeah,
it wasn't long after, wasn't long after that the book was put in my hand. And that is one of the illustrations that connected with me as a pastor,
yeah,
like what you're saying, because this is our life today. Like
yeah,
this is what we deal with. and institutionalism.
Yeah.
It's what we deal with. So I think that's a, not that you wouldn't use the penny, but I think, who was it? I don't even know if, where was I? They didn't even use the penny illustration. They used the, just used the evangelist and the disciple maker illustration.
Well, you know, you can use any denomination. You can say the, you know, the
Yeah.
peso, the rupee, or whatever. I mean, you can you it translates. It translates so well because you can say, you know, if you double that, this is what you're going to get. You know, you can put it in pennies. A lot of people understand what dollars are. They get that. But you could use their denomination and say this is how much you'll have. And that you know, that idea of the idea of the pennies is that it looks slow at first. It looks insignificant at first. It looks like you're not doing anything or getting anything at first, which is the whole process of making disciples because it is slow. It is methodical. It's not encouraging at first. But the more you go, the more it doubles, the more exciting it gets. Just like,
Yeah.
you know, can you imagine that 15th, 16th day? Then you start really grabbing traction. And then you're like, ooh, 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 ooh. And then you get to day 28, 29, 30. Wow. You know,
Yeah.
then you got that huge amount. And just like
Well,
with the,
and it goes back. It goes back to the funnel
yeah,
as you, like I said, that for me is a um, visual
mm,
visual that connects you back to that, because we can't. I mean, can you imagine the, if you really were to draw out the process connected to the evangelist versus the disciple maker, if you were to draw it out with that idea of starting with Paul to Timothy to faithful, could you imagine how wide that would be?
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just that's why, like for me, that's a good illustration that connects you back to that simple but very important part of lesson six
Mm,
with the all to Timothy, the faithful man to others also.
yeah. It would look like a cracked glass with all the spiders.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
And the same thing with
yeah. I was
event,
sitting,
huh?
I was sitting beside a guy at the conference the other day, and the way he was drawing that out was like a tree root.
Mm,
So it was like a tree, and then
mm,
underground, it was like these root. It was good.
mm,
I'd never seen that before,
mm,
and there were all the roots of the tree. It was one tree, but then there were all the roots, and it had, and then he was like labeling the roots. It
mm.
was good.
Huh.
It was a different way of seeing it.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
million ways to look at it. Um, Anything to communicate. Just make sure you're doing it, giving the right perspective. And the same thing with evangelists, with the just like doubling the pennies. At the beginning, it looks like you're not doing anything, but the fact that you pass the evangelist in the 23rd year, that's 23 years. And after, and think about this too. By the 23rd year, it's so far out of your control. I mean, you have, and so when you want to lose control, at what level? Lose control at the first level. You know, get it over with, and release it. Right. So
Yeah.
that's just good encouragement. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
and then the end of this whole thing is you the how do you transfer this to somebody else? The five um, the five C's, I guess you want to say it. It works out in English. It's not going to work out in any other language like that. But how to transfer this vision, um, and that is the see it clearly. The and that is probably the key. Just like personal responsibility, yeah. Not only you take responsibility, you have to see, you have to understand this clearly. You have to understand where you're headed, right? Say it consistently, show it continually, share it compassionately. That's the hard one, right? And then safeguard it, right? So when you go through those five, you know,
Mhm.
don't don't camp out and make that a half an hour, but spend about 5-10 minutes of just really going through that, because it's very important for that people understand what it is they're trying to do, and the perspective that they need to come from. So,
Yeah.
anything else you want to add about?
No, I think that's a good setup for the last few lessons, man.
All right. So again, slow down. You don't want to make it 2 hours, but you don't want to make it 30 minutes either with a translator.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
you know, it's a skill to learn how that to know when you've done what you need to do and shut up. That's a skill. So if you said everything you needed to say, and you have a translator, and you're 45 minutes in, then you're just done. But you shouldn't be able to teach this lesson in 45 minutes with a translator. This is a
Yeah.
if you're just doing it in English, it should be a 30 to 45 minute lesson at least.
Yeah, there's an old song that kept popping up into my head years back.
Yeah.
I think it's John Mayer. I think he's the guy, and the title of it is "Say What You Need to Say."
Yeah.
And I bet he says the song. I bet he says that phrase in the song 50, 60, 70 times. Say what you need to say, and it was like that. I heard that one day, and I was wrestling with my continual rambling in teaching, in conversation as well, and that is a very good secular song
Hmm.
to say what you're saying, which
Yeah.
is say what you need to say, shut up, and trust the process.
Hmm.
Because one of the things that you will try to do, that I have tried to do, that I still try to do at times, is you will try to convince people. And if you are trying to convince somebody about this stuff, then you will ramble, you will
Hmm.
put yourself in a place that's not good.
Right.
And the information is what is going to convince people. The word of God through the
Hmm.
spirit of God
Yeah.
brings the illumination. So that was something I again, I think public speakers oftentimes carry that weight of thinking that how good they deliver it
Hmm.
will determine how good they hear it. That is a lie from the pit of hell.
Yeah.
We want you to deliver it well.
Yes.
We want you to say the information, but your um, your ability in it is not what God needs.
Right.
Your ability to stick to the information and say it like it's supposed to be said, especially early on,
Hmm.
because you and I are, and I know many people can conversate about this like we have been doing.
Hmm.
That's because we've been in it a long time.
Hmm.
And we've said it a lot and
Hmm.
we've heard it a lot. But early on, say what you need to say. Trust the process.
Yeah.
Shut up. Sit down.
Yep. All right, man. Well, if that's it, then that's it.
Yep.